Today, rent crisis? What's really going on? Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics, one host post covering finance and property news with a distinctively Australian flavour. In the latest household surveys, we noted a further rise in rental stress. Households are experiencing cash flow issues relating to trying to pay their rents. In fact, the number of households in the condition are rising fast, caused by a broad rise in goods and services as reflected in the inflation which we're experiencing and which is running at the fastest in years. And of course, rental growth also feeds into the CPI directly. One other factor is the apparent rise in rents. In our survey, some households are facing a potential rise of 20%, others less. This depends on the rental agreement and when rents are reviewed, and by how much property owners seek to meet the market. Two other observations, though, from our surveys. Some households are being forced to seek alternative, cheaper accommodation because of rent rises, even if it means moving to poorer quality housing or further away. And some landlords are now switching back from longer-term rentals to Airbnb as the tourist market sparks back into life after the COVID lockdowns. In fact, the supply of rental property is under extreme pressure in many areas, with vacancy rates very low, and this, of course, before the latest influx of migrants. But one question to consider is how rents are really behaving. As an article in The Conversation written by Ben Phillips, Associate Professor, Centre of Social Research and Methods, and the Centre of Economic Policy Research at the ANU, wrote, "You wouldn't know it from the pages of our daily newspapers, but the rate of growth in rents has been pretty modest. Not everywhere, not for everyone, but for most Australians who rent." According to the most recent count used by the Bureau of Statistics to compile the Consumer Price Index, rents increased by just 1.6% in the year to June. By comparison, wages climbed 2.6%. Higher increases in other prices pushed the overall Consumer Price Index up 6.1%. Rent decreases during COVID meant that over the last 5 years, the total increase has been just 1.5%, and average rents are barely any higher than they were at the start of COVID. The Bureau gets its data directly from the computers of real estate agents, state housing authorities, and the Department of Defence for Darwin. It covers rent actually paid for a matched sample of dwellings, meaning it refers to the same dwellings each quarter so as to record genuine price changes. In contrast, the media and some interest groups prefer to focus on the data for advertised or asking rents. These have been growing more strongly than the overall mass of rents paid. Nationwide, advertised rents climbed 8.2% in the year to June and by almost 18% over the 5 years to June on CoreLogic's data. And SQM Research also publishes regular tables of asking rents and also reports significant rises, with capital cities combined rising 18.5% and Sydney combined up more than 20% over the last year. But, as Ben highlights, advertised rents are only a tiny fraction of the rents actually paid. Not all properties get advertised, and advertised rents don't always meet up with the agreed rent. Most renters remain on existing contracts. Although advertised rents might be expected to relate to overall rents over time, they are not necessarily representative of the entire market. Our main concern ought to be what has happened to low-income renters, he says. Australia's lowest-income renters receive rent assistance, which is pretty frugal. Single renters get no more than $73 a week, and very large families up to $97, but the typical rent paid by Australians on rent assistance hasn't increased much. Over the year to June, the median rent for rent assistance recipients climbed by 1%, roughly $5 a week, and over the past 5 years it's increased 9%, somewhat less than the increase in the Consumer Price Index of 10.7%. Over the longer term, low-income rents have increased more sharply, with households in the bottom 40% of income distribution used to spend around 22% of their after-tax income on rent, and they now spend about 30%, down from a peak of 32%. So he says, if there is a crisis in rents, the figures suggest it's not widespread. and rents in locations including Perth and Darwin are climbing much more strongly than others as they come off long periods of negative rent growth. The growth in asking rents is most pronounced away from the cities, in particular in holiday and tree change destinations such as Richmond Tweed, which includes Byron Bay, Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast and Wide Bay. Some were experiencing strong growth in asking rents before COVID, which accelerated through COVID. Other regions, including parts of Sydney and Melbourne, have experienced subdued or negative growth. So across all renting households, we are yet to see any serious growth, he says. To date, the rent crisis has been felt mainly in a few specific locations and among people looking for new rental properties. Which takes me back to rental stress. I think the real crisis is in cash flow among renting households. With close to 2 million renters under financial pressure, we see specific hotspots among certain household groups, including young growing families and first-generation Australians. In fact, our mapping shows the hotspots around Sydney, especially to the west, including areas around Campbelltown and Liverpool, or in Melbourne to the east and west of the city, as well as in the CBD. And in Brisbane, where the counts are lower, we still see hotspots towards Ipswich and the Gold Coast. And in the west, in Western Australia, we see some pressure to the north and south of the city, as well as several areas in and around the CBD. So my point is this: rent rises is only a small part of the discussion we should be having about the rental sector, which is under pressure because of supply issues, cost of living pressure, and the housing affordability question. And based on what we see currently unfolding, there is going to be no respite for months on years to come. And I should say that if you'd like more information about what's going on with regard to our surveys, join us tomorrow evening, Tuesday at 8 p.m. Sydney time, where I'll be discussing this in significant detail and also looking at some of the recent price changes across the country. So join us at 8 p.m. Sydney and you can ask a question live. Now, if you're buying your home in Sydney's contentious market, you don't need to stand alone. This is the time you need to have Edwin Almeida from Ribbon Property Consultants standing alongside you. Buying a property is both challenging and adversarial. The vendor has a professional on their side. Emotions run high, price discovery and price transparency are hard to find, and then there's the wasted time and financial investments that you make. Edwin understands your needs, so why not engage a licensed professional to stand alongside you? With RPC, you know you have experience, knowledge, and master negotiators looking after your best interests. So shoot Ribbon an email at info@ribbonproperty.com.au, and if you use the promo code DFAWTW/Martin, you can get a 10% discount offer. I'm Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Many thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.